Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tell the Damn Story. That's Alex Simmons. This is Chris Ryan. Alex is a legendary writer of everything from Batman to Archie to Scooby-Doo to his own legendary character, Aaron Blackjack Day. I am less legendary and more of a rumor. Having written just a bunch of different stuff,
Genius
Marion
High
Gunner
and
series, the
yes,
Soul Scream Anthology, a bunch of other people, some pop culture. So yeah, there's a little bit of everything here, and we're here to talk about aspects of writing in hopes that your writing journey is just a little smoother. And today, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Alex Simmons has cooked up what we call in the business a doozy.
It's an interesting
So,
way of
Alex,
looking at it.
doozy it up, bro.
Yeah, well, it's as I said when we were in the green room, which this is the
Yes.
brown room, but we're in the green room. As I was telling Chris, a lot of my more recent experiences with clients and students of mine has been about how doing what we do, being writers, being filmmakers, being choreographers or musicians, composers, how it's impacted on our lives or impacted on their lives or help them to look at the world around them differently and help them deal with things. And so I really got focused in on how the arts really helps us in certain ways survive certain experiences, or we survive because of the arts in certain ways. And that dialogue in my head became, ooh, Chris and I should talk about this because we've had conversations on so many levels about the arts and what writing means to us and what creativity means to us, and both of us have been actors. So I thought, yes, let us explore that. Let us talk about how the arts can influence lives to the point of helping people survive things, or, and again, as Chris pointed out, there are other ways of tilting the lens to look at that word survival. So, Chris,
Hmm.
you told me an interesting story, and I don't know if this is where you want to start, so you can start wherever you want. But you told me an interesting story about a young man in college,
Well, yes.
a handsome young man in college,
Yes,
a passionate young handsome man in college. Yeah.
with flowing locks of curly
Yes.
hair.
Yes.
So you know it was a long time ago.
Yes. With the
But
locks are flowing. Yes.
yeah, when I was a kid, I fancied myself a musician because I knew 3 notes on my bass guitar, sometimes 4. And I actually went to college and was seeking to major in music. And, I did music and I did English, and I wrote for the newspaper there, and I wrote for, I would submit to the literary magazine there and all that different stuff. And played a gig or two, not many.
With your 3 or 4 notes.
With my 3 or 4 notes. Luckily, it was, it was the early 80s, so it was a lot of punk. They only needed to, you only need 3 or 4 notes. So there you go. So, and not all in the same song.
You
Ramones
can
would do
spread
one
them
or two
out.
notes. Yeah. Use the other 2 notes in the next song. But the college I went to was actually classically trained and orchestral, and I was an electric bass player, so it wasn't a good fit. There's something. Research before you go to college, ladies and gents. But anyway, end of my sophomore year, before I was going to declare, because you have to declare for junior, senior year, a professor stopped me in the hallway in the music building, Professor Sperber. And he said, you're Ryan, right? Chris Ryan, right? I was like, yes, I am, Professor. I love your history of blues class. Yeah. Ryan, let me tell you something. I'm the head of the department. And I've spoken with the other professors, and no one doubts how much you love music. You love music. Thank you, Professor. But loving music doesn't make you a musician. But I play out a bit, the professor said. So let me ask you a question, and please answer it honestly. And he said, when you are back wherever you live, the dorms or your house or whatever, and you have some free time, what is it that you do? He said to be honest. So I said, well, a lot of times I write poetry or short stories. Or I'm working on what might be a novel. And, sometimes I write for the newspaper. He's like, yes. And then he reminded me of Aristotle, who said, you are what you do most often. He said, Ryan, he says, that you run to writing. If you were truly a musician, you would say, well, I pick up my instrument. I practice this. I'm working on that scale. I did. There's no shame in it, but be who you are. Because I was raised Catholic, I did not slay him right there in the hallway. I did slay him in my imagination in many different ways for many different years, but he was right. I went home and I wrote about it. Part of the thing about surviving is knowing yourself well enough to know who you are, to know what you're naturally drawn to, what you do when there's not pressure for you to do something specific. And when you know that, whether it's knitting or writing or singing opera, you'll be much further along the journey to knowing yourself. To thine own self be true. And I think that was a key thing that helped me survive that piece of bad news and start leaning into my natural tendencies. I still love music. I still know four notes, but
Intimately.
I've been being who I am and going to the natural inclination has led to much more productivity than music has. So know who you are. That's the first lesson of today,
Yep.
and it's not, you gotta be careful. We lie to ourselves all the time, Alex.
Or we
I'm
follow someone.
this, I'm that, I'm going to be this, I'm that. Yes, but what are you? What do you do most often?
And sometimes we are influenced by the words that we're being bombarded with, lovingly or in some sort of negative surroundings. Because sometimes people tell you, no, 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 that's for playtime. That's not serious. You can't make money. You can't do this. You can't do that. And so, in trying to say, oh, okay, I guess maybe I'm not mature enough to realize that the arts or this thing that I'm passionate about is not a way of making a living or is not realistic when I'm going to be older, I'll shift and become whatever, fill in the blank. But that's also us then denying. That's us then compressing or suppressing our own natural beliefs as opposed to being able to explore this thing and coming to some conclusions about whether or not we want to pursue it on our own. Chris
Yeah,
obviously did not stop loving music
right.
because of what this professor said. But at some point, you adjusted the lens in terms of what you were really going to pursue in
I
your life.
looked at, I was really angry with him, but
Oh, of course.
then I found myself back in I think I was still in the dorm at that time, writing about how pissed I was and writing a poem about killing an evil wizard or something, or defeating an evil wizard, all that sort of crap that you do at a certain age in your life.
Right.
And it's only crap if that writer is still evolving. I mean, you look at the lyrics of like James Dio, he was always slaying wizards and dragons, so they were fantastic lyrics. So, it's just that I was just blowing off steam, and writing evolved eventually.
And there's nothing wrong with that either.
No, there's not. I mean, that's
Yeah.
all part of the osmosis, but that's, the 10,000 hour thing is for another episode. But I know people who lifelong mechanics who were always drawn to that. That's who you are. That's fine.
Hmm.
You know, one of my best friends, his brother's a lawyer, actually argued a case in front of the Supreme Court. And there's only three things that I've seen this guy come alive for. He comes alive for pretty well when he's talking about the New York Giants, and he comes alive really well when he's talking about seeing the Who when he was in college way back. But when he talks about the law, that's a different thing. I've only spoken to him or been around when he spoke about law once or twice, but you see it. You see it in the eye, and you hear it in the tone, and you see it in the body language. It is part and parcel of who he is.
Mm.
I, yes, shamed as I am to say it. When I
Oh,
first got out of college, one of the jobs I had a series of different jobs. Oh, wait, since I was about 12. But once I got out of college, I worked for a politician. I didn't like him, and I learned how much I didn't like politics. But there was one really amazing moment, and that was he was doing some kind of fundraiser. And the big hook for the fundraiser was then Governor Mario Cuomo. And he did this great memory trick, which some other episode we'll talk about. But I watched this guy because how often do you get to look at someone of his stature? Don't think of his sons, think of Mario. Okay. This is a guy whose vision and eloquence wound up getting a bridge named after him. But you could see right up into his eyes, and you could see it went deep into it. Wasn't the politician I worked for, his heart stopped somewhere outside of himself. He was, but this guy, Mario Cuomo, he lived and breathed and spoke to people with a soulfulness and a warmth so rare for politicians. That made me realize he loved doing this thing that
mm,
he was doing. He was good at it, but he loved the interaction with people, that eye to eye thing and all that sort of stuff. And it was another thing where this guy found his place,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and it goes on and on. Whoever, I know a painter, and that guy is 100%. It paint oozes out of his pores. It's just that's who he is. It is really the biggest thing you can do is to be honest with yourself and observe yourself having done things. Don't observe yourself. Okay, I'm going to see what I do today, because then your back of your mind is like, go right so it'll look good, or whatever you want to do.
I was thinking too of a couple of things in terms of my own personal experience, but before I go there, I want to just swing back to Stephen King was quoted at one point in an interview as saying that he said writing gave him the will to live after a car accident that he experienced in 1999, and he suffered some severe injuries. And it's to him, he said at that point, it wasn't the writing wasn't about the money or about the fame or any of that. It was about getting through this thing
Yeah.
and not every day, every moment, every minute focusing on the damage that's been done to him and maybe the concerns or fears about how am I going to come out of this physically? Am I going to come out of this physically? What's it going to do to my life and all this? It was about where to take some of that anxiety, that fear, that anger, whatever, channel it in a certain way that allows you to survive the next few hours, the next few days, the next few months, depending on what's happening. There was, and I never remember the name of this other person, and that's bad on me.
Well,
So research,
before
but
before you leave Stephen King,
okay,
if people want to read more about that, pick up On Writing. Half the book is about on writing. The other half of the book is the account of exactly what he's talking about. It's gorgeously written, and it is exactly what we're talking about in detail that only Stephen King can capture. So it's well worth looking at.
because
Okay, Steve, we
he's a
did we
writer,
did do
right?
an
Yeah,
endorsement. He is kind of a writer, that guy. I think he's got potential.
yeah. I'm thinking
Keep
maybe we'll
working
see.
at it, Stevie.
Yeah, we'll see more from you as the years roll on, right? But the other thing of that too is with the Stephen King, but you also have, excuse me.
You want to talk about another guy?
Yes, I was. I was going to say that it's on me that I have not researched the name because when I heard this some years ago, it impacted on me personally because something I was going through. There was a publisher, this is going back, I don't know, maybe 50 years, a successful publisher who received a notification that he had cancer and was going to possibly not make it. And the doctors were saying there's this treatments and things that we can do for you. You can take, there's no guarantees, but let's do this. And he was scared, obviously, and he was going through the treatments and it was very hard. It was very hard. And at one point, he was in front of the television set, he's turned it on and he was watching some sort of comedy and he found himself laughing. And in the laughing, he felt a little less tense, a little less focused on, oh my God, what's happening to me? And he got lost in that. And slowly but surely, over a period of days and then to weeks and then into months, he found himself going to comedy, reading comedy, watching funny films or shows or whatever, and laughing and feeling lighter and feeling more filled with more, let's just say, a more positive energy or a more positive way of looking at the day-to-day moments. And he swore by the fact that he did make it through the treatments. He beat the cancer. But he swore that a lot of that was because of humor and comedy and how
Well,
it saved him in
yeah.
certain ways. Now, he never mentioned, at least in the accounts that I read, and again, I mentioned that it hit me emotionally because I was going through something similar, but he never mentioned the list of comedy films or books or jokes or things like that. But just think about it. Somewhere, at some time, some writer or writers sat down and wrote these funny things. Maybe their lives weren't full of humor at the time, but they wrote these moments, they wrote these stories, they wrote these jokes and put it out there. And in so doing, they didn't just entertain somebody for an evening, they actually helped save someone's life.
Sure.
So, sometimes we don't know what our art is doing once it goes beyond ourselves. But as Chris was saying, it starts with connecting with where is that art for you? How does it serve you? How does it make you feel? Are you being true to it and true to yourself? Yeah. I was going to mention that we can talk about adults and disease and politics and things like that. I also, for a number of years, and I still do, but for a number of years, I was the artistic director of a children's theater company in the Bronx. Here we are in the Bronx. It's where Chris and I met, as a matter of fact, all those many, many, many years ago. And the not-for-profit organization that I was involved in was there to serve underserved youth, which is a very PC way of saying kids who don't have a lot. They don't have maybe full form micro families or nuclear families. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have, it's just not, they don't have the most that one could get in an average scenario.
Okay.
And so a lot of these kids were coming from difficult backgrounds and stressful backgrounds. And I'm teaching theater to them. I'm giving them acting lessons and I'm letting us develop original plays and short pieces through these exercises. And we actually did productions. And a number of the kids at the time would come after school on weekends and work their tails off. And you would think, as you watched and as I was involved with them initially, it was all about, oh, I got to play and pretend I'm this and pretend I'm that, and this is fun, and I get to hang with my friends, and this is all cool, and life is good. And then as the years rolled on, just a few 4 or 5 years as I was doing this, I began to realize that this was a haven for a number of them. This was the only place in their world experience at that time where they could be themselves and they could aspire to be something more, to see themselves in a more positive light, to get positive feedback, to see that the day to day that I'm existing in, I can affect that somehow and maybe make it a little bit better. Or by doing what I'm doing in this show, I'm entertaining other people and they like me and they're feeling better about it. This was all this stuff that was happening to these kids. And I am blessed to have lived long enough, as Chris and I are constantly talking about this, to have these 14-year-olds and 15-year-old kids that I met all those years ago grow up into full-blown adults with children of their own and have them come back and tell me what that earlier time meant to them, how the arts, how those after school sessions with us, how those performances, those being on the stage in silly costumes and makeup and everything, how that strengthened their resolve to make it and to go forth and to strive to be or gain more than they thought they could ever possibly have. And then we're not talking about people becoming wealthy. We're talking about people becoming full-blown versions of themselves. And so once again, the arts in certain ways help many different peoples at many different ages or age levels to survive or to blossom and prosper in certain ways. And again, not just about coin of the realm.
True. Okay, so let's tie this into the people who came in here or came to this show for what this show is supposed to do, which is,
Tell the damn story.
get them to tell their own damn stories.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this apply? Clearly, there is a time in life, and it might be for many people out there where writing is a sanctuary. That's great, and that's good enough. And it might be something that, oh, I like doing. That's fine. It can be a hobby, and you can send some stuff out there. There's plenty of places that publications so that are called for the love. For the love, that means you ain't getting paid. Or some, you get a pittance. But if that's not what it's about for you, then fine. How do we know where we fit with that? It's that answer is different for each and every one of you. And yeah, it takes a lot of self-reflection.
Yep, yep.
And there's what you think you are, and then what you do most often. And the combination of those two will give you pretty close there. But I think the point I want to make here is that whatever it is that you are in relation to art, that's fine. That's something I've had to tell myself a lot because, I lean more towards independent than traditional. And I'm experimenting now with traditional,
You mean
and that's
writing or
fun.
publishing?
Publishing.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, even your writing, if you're going to self-publish it, independently publish it, it's a different set of challenges than
Mm-hmm.
if you're going the traditional way. The good news for me for independently is that I only reject myself half the time, which is which is a much better batting average than in traditional publishing where it takes a long time and you have to deal with a lot of rejection, right? But if that's really what you want, if I want to see my book on a shelf
Mm-hmm.
next to that, well, that's your thing. I want to do a screenplay that so and so winds up acting in. Okay, then go there, but understand, and you do this by reading about those professions and about listening. God bless YouTube. God bless YouTube, Alex. You can look up interviews up
On
from
infinitum.
anybody,
Yeah.
any topic, anything that's just it. You can really do deep dives anywhere. Um, and then if it rings true to what you feel in your heart and soul, then you'll kind of know, okay, that's the direction I want to go to. So many people didn't know that they were going in the direction of actor or writer.
Painter,
A
choreographer,
painter.
dancer. Yeah.
Yeah, one guy I was listening to one guy, and he had done a theater. Josh Johnson was just on. He was on. Michelle Obama has a podcast now. She's like, I want to compete against Chris and Alex.
Yeah, those are her exact
That's
words.
what she said. She's like, I hope we can get a little bigger audience than they do. I don't know. They're pretty legendary. But she was interviewing Josh Johnson, and he said that he had gotten a degree in theatrical lighting design or professional in lighting design. And when he finished that, he goes, they never give you the whole bill at the beginning before you start studying, which I thought was a great line, wasn't it? But he's, almost immediately, he's like, God, I just spent a lot of money on something I don't want to do.
Yeah.
And he did little jobs in there, but he wound up becoming, I mean, if you turn on the Daily Show or if you turn on YouTube and put stand-up comedy, you're going to get some Josh Johnson. And I am struck by, he says in the interview, he says, I want to be one of the best comedy writers. So one of the great challenges is to put my material out there again, force me to create new material.
Mm-hmm.
So he puts out, holy cow, he puts out a ton of stuff and very topical. And, now he could have easily, by this point, he could have easily gotten the one Netflix special or one HBO special a year type thing, get a set that's 40 to 60 minutes, tour it around the country, do the special, move on. I mean, there's tons of people who made a great living that way.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got something's burning in him.
It's a
So
calling. Yeah.
I mean, he is writing and performing and releasing on YouTube, which is, I mean, I'm sure he's getting some monetary because he's got some commercials and stuff on there. But
Well, the thing that
a lot
I
of writing.
find really exciting about him, and I found him way before he got
Hmm.
this set in some of the teams that you've mentioned, some of the shows and experiences you've mentioned. But he has this very comfortable, natural storyteller way of talking about his life, life in general, politics, you name it. He's not he's not in your face, he's not storming, he's not even arrogant. He's like
No,
he's like this humble guy going, I just I don't how do we and it makes him so approachable. And then he hits you with these
he's got some
gems.
of that southern politeness to him,
Yeah, and then
right?
he hits you with these gems, like he
Yeah.
he will he will pace something out just right, and then boom,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't see that coming, and it's
And
great.
it could be the most precise, absolutely just blow the topic he's talking about away, and it could be just burns a politician or something like that. But it's done with such politeness,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means this guy has found his voice,
Mm-hmm.
and he has decided to hone his comedic voice by producing, writing and sending out, writing and sending out. And it's another lesson for today that, with the advent of podcasts like this and YouTube and all that sort of stuff, the gatekeepers are off to the side now. And they are there, and they're quite frustrating to deal with or to see people dealing with. Think of Stephen Colbert and other people like that who have gotten a lot of heat lately. But Josh Johnson sidestepping all of that. He just still does the Daily Show. He's on rotation, but his stuff, he's got complete control. He's doing a thing called the Flowers Tour, where everyone who comes in gets a flower. That's the hook, right? But he's doing whatever's in the news that day and talking about it or that week. And it's an amazing thing to watch. And he has
And it's
definitely
funny.
found his voice.
It's
And
funny
that's
because
kind of what we're trying to get people to do.
it brings me back to something, Chris, you and I've talked about on other episodes about how we feel about what's going on in the world and how that is influencing us, how it's influencing other creatives and all that. And what do we do with that and what do we do about that? And I think what we're saying here with Josh, and we can, not to make this about the Josh Johnson show, but what we're saying Josh does so well, and some others also are doing it so well, is they're not hiding from the things that are distressing to them. Let's just use that word for now. They are finding ways to communicate through their art, their opinions or their views, or help us examine these things.
Right.
And I think, again, it's about, as Chris was saying, it's about finding your voice, but it's also about being true to yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to submit to someone else's paradigm of what expression is. One of the people who I get published through, she has a publication that she calls the Horror Zine, and it's a
Hmm.
great for the love publication. But yeah, I submit to it because I wanted to be in that. I wanted to have that on my. And recently, she was getting a hard time from people who said, "This is not true horror. It's got to be more vicious, more bloody." That's no, that's your definition of horror. It's not her horror. If you want body trauma, there's a place for that. You want splatterpunk, there's a place for that. Horror zine is what we would call a gateway horror publication where, the people are first discovering horror or first seeing what they can do writing horror or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. That's one of the places. Soul Scream is another one of those
Mm-hmm.
places.
Mm-hmm.
Gateway horror, right? It's introductory more than the other end of the spectrum, but that doesn't mean one side of the spectrum or the other is more right.
Or can only one can exist?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
There can be only one. Yes.
It's the same thing with the banning of the book. So you can't say this, or you can't. Yes, you can. Everybody can say everything. Relax. It does. It's not artistic to tell someone else what they cannot do. If you don't like that style, write your own style.
Yeah. Or read something else,
Yeah.
or
So
turn on something else. Yeah.
don't let anybody define who you are or what you can or cannot write. Read
Which,
widely. You'll find what you're most attracted to, what you feel most at home writing. And write that, or draw that, or act that, whatever. But it's another thing people will have to survive
right.
is the unnecessary expectation of others.
And again, bringing it back to the arts, it is still very much about how does the arts serve us as creatives, but also how does it serve us as recipients of the creativity? To look at a Frida Kahlo painting and wonder what she's thinking is one thing, but to know that she was there, she expressed herself through this art, and this art touches certain people are, like her art, certain people are fans of her art. But this is her expressing her views of things, how she saw the world, some things that maybe she went through, and there's an audience for this. There's an audience for Stephen King. There's an audience for Aaron Sorkin. There's an audience for just so many other, Alice Walker. There's an audience for the creativity that Chris and I put out there. And definitely, knowing Chris as I do, I can look at several of his books and see the philosophy or the curiosity of Chris Ryan in that work. Although his Genius High book doesn't read like his police procedural work, or like his It's Been a Privilege, which is the serial killer book, which you should, if you haven't purchased it on Amazon, you should get very quickly soon,
That's
please.
book of poetry.
Yeah,
Yes.
book of poetry, right. We've talked about that. I'm just trying not to, but if you haven't gotten it, you should have. So, it's all of that is some portion of Chris Ryan expressing thoughts, feelings, curiosities, and so forth.
Hmm.
Same thing with me. The difference between my writing Archie and science fiction and Blackjack is, yes, different characters in a different circumstance or setting, but some of my philosophies, some of my beliefs, some of my curiosities are in that. And in some ways, it allows me to get them out there. It allows me to ask questions. It allows me to suggest something or to state how I feel about a thing through my work, either directly or through these characters. And I think that ultimately that's what this episode was to be about in our own inimitable style of exploring how we feel about the arts, how we feel and hope you feel about the arts as you are entering it for the first time, or wrestling through it now, or have, even if you've been in it, like some of the guests on this show have been in it for years. Teal, who's one of the older guests that we have on the show, he just doesn't stop, and his
True.
curiosity about life and films and things like that is, to me, probably still as strong as it ever was. And some of that comes through his work, which then his audience picks up on. So don't deny who you are and what you feel and what you're curious about and what you're troubled by and everything. Use the arts as a conduit to explore that and share that.
Amen.
Hallelujah. Okay. All right. So, Chris, anything you want to say in winding this up?
No, I mean, I think we took a chance on this episode.
Of course we did, because
And
we
it
can.
was, ladies and gentlemen, you might have felt it was a little more funky than some of our other episodes. And I hope you're okay with that. We're living through weird times. And there might be some of you in there who needed to hear, how do I survive this? And I hope that this was helpful. But there is a spot down below, not hell. We're just talking about the comments.
Yeah, it's a little bit further up than that, right?
That if we didn't answer a question, or if we sparked a question or a comment or whatever, please feel free, get in touch with us. We also have an email address in
Yes, we
case
do.
you want to email us. Is it that down there too?
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
find
it's
it
in
down there
there
too.
too.
There's
Yeah.
so much down there. You just
Yeah,
go
it's
check.
like the
So
bargain basement area, right?
hopefully we're helpful, and hopefully gave you a little more peace when you're on your own keyboard or your own writing pad telling your own damn story, because that's kind of the point.
Absolutely.
Peace, my brother.
Take care, Captain. See you again.
We will talk to you soon.
Take care,
Take care,
everybody.
everybody.